Captain stood on the observation deck of the Perseverance and watched another Confederation warship dock without paying fees. The massive alien vessel, 3 times the size of his diplomatic ship, simply attached to the human-built station and started refueling. No communication, no payment, no respect. This happened every week. Had been stationed at Threshold Station for 15 years. 15 years of watching the Confederation treat humans like servants. 15 years of filing complaints that went nowhere. 15 years of keeping his anger buried deep inside where it could not cause problems. Another one walked up beside him, her tablet glowing with more documentation. She was the cultural, which meant she recorded every insult, every violation, every broken promise. Her files could fill a library, but nobody in the Confederation ever read them. The third this month replied, "They don't even pretend anymore." Pulled up a report on her tablet. Last month, they held our medical supplies at customs for 17 days. The plague on New Seoul killed 4,000 people while those supplies sat in their warehouse. When I asked why, they said it was routine inspection. Clenched his fists. 4,000 dead because aliens decided to play games with paperwork. But what could humanity do? The Confederation controlled the galaxy. They had 10,000 warships. Humanity had barely 200 ships, most of them converted cargo vessels with weapons bolted on the sides. 80 years ago, humans had invented faster-than-light travel and rushed into the stars with hope in their hearts. They thought they would find friends out here. Instead, they found the Confederation, a coalition of 4 ancient alien species who had divided the galaxy among themselves thousands of years ago. The Confederation gave humanity 12 small worlds on the edge of the galaxy. They called it the Ember Systems, a probationary zone where humans could prove they deserved to exist. It sounded generous until you realized it was a cage with invisible bars. Down in the docking levels, finished repairing a fuel line that a Confederation crew had deliberately broken. They did this often, breaking equipment and then laughing while humans fixed it. He was covered in grease and exhausted, but he could not show anger. Angry humans got arrested. Sometimes they disappeared entirely. His supervisor called, "That ship needs engine maintenance. Get down there." Grabbed his tools and headed to Bay 7. The crew treated him like furniture, not speaking to him, sometimes walking through his workspace without looking. One of them kicked his toolbox across the bay because it was in the way. Tools scattered everywhere. He picked them up silently. He thought about his sister, who died 3 months ago in a station accident. A Confederation crew member had shoved her out of the way, and she fell 3 levels down a maintenance shaft. The investigation closed in 6 hours. Accidental death, they ruled. The alien who pushed her was never even questioned. Finished the repair work and returned to his quarters. On his wall, he kept a photo of smiling at her graduation. She had wanted to be a doctor. Now she was ashes scattered in space. Back on the Perseverance, received an urgent transmission from Earth. He entered the secure communication room and opened the message. Admiral's face appeared on the screen, and the Admiral looked grim. "Captain, the Confederation has issued a new demand. They want us to evacuate New within 30 days. Felt ice in his stomach. New was humanity's most successful colony. 2 million people lived there. Rich farms, clean water, beautiful forests. It was proof that humans could build something good out here. On what grounds? Asked. They claim it's needed for galactic security purposes. They didn't explain further. We have 30 days to remove 2 million colonists, or they will remove them by force. Knew what that meant. He had studied history. The Confederation had done this before to other species. 7 times in 4,000 years, according to old records. Each time the species refused, the Confederation demonstrated their power, and those species were never heard from again. What does the Council say? Asked. They're debating. Some want to surrender New to avoid war. Others say if we give them new, they'll take another world next year and another the year after that. We're meeting in 2 days to make a final decision." The transmission ended. Sat in the dark room for a long time. 15 years of patience. 15 years of swallowing insults. 15 years of watching humans die while the Confederation played their games. And now they wanted humanity's best world just because they could take it. Found him an hour later. "Captain, are you okay?" "They want new," he said quietly. Sat down, her face pale. "Will we fight?" "With what? 200 ships against 10,000, laughed, but it was a bitter sound. "We're like ants challenging a boot." "Then we surrender." Thought about sister. He thought about 4,000 people dead from delayed medical supplies. He thought about 15 years of documentation that nobody read. He thought about every human who had been pushed around, insulted, robbed, and killed by aliens who thought humans were nothing. "I don't know," he said finally, "but I know that if we surrender, they'll keep taking and taking until there's nothing left of us." The next day was summoned to meet the Confederation ambassador at Threshold Station. Ambassador Hal was a huge, insect-like creature with 4 arms and cold black eyes. He towered over in the meeting room. "Captain, I trust your government will comply with our request." "It's not a request when you threaten force," replied carefully. Hal made a clicking sound that might have been laughter. "Captain, let me explain something. Your species exists because we allow it. We gave you those 12 worlds. We can take them back. The Confederation has maintained peace in this galaxy for 4,000 years. We do this by ensuring that young, violent species like yours do not threaten the established order." "We haven't threatened anyone." "Your very existence is a threat. You breed too fast. You expand too quickly. You are aggressive and unpredictable. New is too valuable to waste on your kind." Hal leaned closer. "You will evacuate New, or we will show you what happens to species who forget their place in the galaxy." Felt something crack inside him. 15 years of patience. 15 years of playing by their rules. And this creature stood here, casual as anything, explaining why humans deserve to be kicked around. "I'll deliver your message to my government," said quietly. "See that you do. You have 30 days, not 31, 30. Hal walked out without another word. Stood alone in the meeting room. His hands were shaking, not from fear, from rage. Pure, cold rage that he had kept buried for 15 years. Appeared in the doorway. "Captain." "Send a message to Admiral," said. "Tell him the Confederation doesn't want peace. They want submission, and there's a difference." That night, across human space, people waited. They waited to hear if their government would fight or surrender. They waited to learn if humanity would stand up or kneel down. They waited to see if 15 years of patience had meant anything at all. On New, a teacher named Sara put her students to bed and looked at the stars. Somewhere up there, people were deciding her fate. She wondered if they understood what they were really deciding. This wasn't about one planet. It was about whether humans would remain human or become pets of the Confederation. The 30-day countdown began, and humanity had to choose. The Human Systems Council met in an underground bunker on Earth. 12 representatives sat around a table, arguing about survival. Outside, billions of humans waited to hear if they would fight or surrender. Admiral stood at the head of the table, his military uniform pressed and perfect, but his face showed the exhaustion of 3 sleepless days. "We have 27 days left. We need to decide now." Council member spoke first. "We can't fight them. They have 10,000 warships. We have 200, and most of those are cargo ships with guns attached. This is suicide." "It's suicide either way," replied. She was the youngest council member, only 32 years old, representing the colony worlds. "If we give them New, they'll take another world next year, then another. They'll bleed us dry slowly." "At least we'd be alive," argued. "Would we?" Pulled up a holographic display. I've been researching Confederation history. In the past 4,000 years, 7 species received probationary zones just like us. All 7 eventually refused a Confederation demand. The Confederation then performed what they called correction events. Those 7 species no longer exist, not scattered, not enslaved, gone, completely erased from the galaxy. The room fell silent. Looked at each council member. So we're choosing between quick death or slow death. There's a third option, said quietly. We make them bleed for it. We make it so expensive to kill us that they think twice about trying it again with another species in the future. That's not survival, said. That's revenge. Maybe survival isn't possible, said. But maybe we can at least die as humans, not as pets who rolled over when their masters told them to. The vote took 6 hours. When it finished, the decision was narrow but clear. Humanity would keep new, they would prepare for war. Admiral sent orders across all human space. Every civilian ship that could fly would be converted for combat. Factories switched to producing weapons. Scientists worked on anything that might give them an edge. And every human watched the countdown timer as 30 days became 25, then 20, then 15. On Threshold Station, made a discovery. She was going through old Confederation records, files that had been uploaded to public databases thousands of years ago and forgotten. She found something that made her blood run cold. She called immediately. Captain, you need to see this. In his quarters, read through the files had found. They were execution orders. 7 times, the Confederation had issued similar demands to young species. When those species refused, the Confederation's military performed correction events. The files described them in cold, bureaucratic language. Complete orbital bombardment of all population centers, deployment of biological weapons to remaining survivors, destruction of any spacecraft attempting to flee. Mission time, approximately 6 hours per species. 6 hours to erase an entire civilization. They've done this 7 times, whispered. This isn't political pressure. They always intended to kill us. The 30 days was just them being polite about it. Felt sick. We need to send this to Earth. I already did, but Captain, there's more. Pulled up another file. The last species they did this to was called they had 8 colony worlds. The Confederation wanted one of them. The refused, but before the correction event, the sent out data dumps to every corner of the galaxy. They documented everything the Confederation did to them. It's how we have these records. Did it help them? No, they're still dead, but the Confederation was embarrassed. Other species saw what happened. There were protests, some minor rebellions. The Confederation had to spend decades rebuilding their reputation. Looked at, maybe that's the best we can do. Make sure everyone knows what they did to us. Meanwhile, on a secret research station orbiting Neptune, an engineer named was working on something impossible. He specialized in faster-than-light communication systems, the quantum entanglement networks that let ships talk across light years instantly. But had discovered something interesting. The Confederation ships all used the same FTL drive system, connected to the same quantum network, and networks could be hacked. He brought his idea to his supervisor. What if we could send a disruption pulse through the Confederation's quantum network? Their FTL drives would fail simultaneously. Ships would be stranded, unable to jump. His supervisor stared at him. That's a weapon that could disable their entire fleet at once. Theoretically, said, I've never tested it. I don't even know if it would work. The calculations suggest it's possible, but there are so many variables. How long to build a prototype? 2 weeks maybe, but I can't guarantee it won't just explode in our faces. Build it anyway. Right now, we need anything that might work. And his team worked 16-hour days, building a device that might save humanity or might do nothing at all. They called it the quantum disruptor, though desperate hope would have been a more accurate name. With 10 days remaining, the Confederation fleet arrived at the edge of the Ember systems. 800 warships, led by Grand Executor. They positioned themselves just outside Nu's orbital space and waited. The message came from his flagship. Humans of Nu, you have 10 days to evacuate. We will provide transport ships. Any humans remaining after the deadline will be considered hostile combatants. This is your final warning. On Nu, Sora helped families pack their belongings. Some people chose to leave. About 200,000 colonists decided to take the Confederation's offer and evacuate, but most stayed. "Why are you staying?" a young boy asked Sora as she helped his family load bags onto a transport. "Because this is my home," Sora said simply, "and I'm tired of running." The boy looked confused. "But you're just a teacher. Teachers can't fight warships." Sora smiled sadly. "No, we can't. But maybe that's not the point. Maybe the point is to show them that humans don't break as easily as they think." The boy's family left. Sora stayed. So did 1.8 million other humans on Nu. Admiral assembled humanity's defense fleet at Nu. 200 ships against 800. The math was brutal. Even if every human ship destroyed 2 Confederation ships, they would still lose. Captain brought the Perseverance from Threshold Station to join the defense. His ship was diplomatic, lightly armed, never meant for combat. But everyone else was coming, so he came too. The night before the deadline, addressed the fleet. Every ship's crew watched as the Admiral spoke from the bridge of the flagship Aurora. "I won't lie to you, we're probably going to die tomorrow. The Confederation has better weapons, better shields, more ships, more experience. On paper, we have no chance." Paused. "But we're not on paper, we're here, we're real, and we're human. For 80 years, we've played by their rules, we've been patient, we've been peaceful, we've swallowed every insult because we thought we could win them over with good behavior." His voice hardened. "We were wrong, they never intended to accept us. To them, we're pests to be controlled or eliminated. Well, if we're going to die anyway, let's die in a way that means something. Let's show them that humans don't bow. Not now, not ever." Across 200 ships, human crews prepared for battle. Weapons were armed. Shields were charged. Prayers were whispered. Letters were written to families who might never read them. The deadline arrived. The countdown hit 0. Sent one final message. "Humans, you have made your choice. We will now demonstrate what happens to species who defy the Confederation. Evacuate immediately or be destroyed." From the Aurora, Admiral sent humanity's response. One word. No. The Confederation fleet advanced. 800 warships moving in perfect formation, weapons hot, ready to perform their 8th correction event in 4,000 years. And humanity's small fleet moved forward to meet them. 200 ships carrying millions of years of human stubbornness, rage, and desperate hope. In the cargo bay of the research vessel Horizon, watched his quantum disruptor charge up. Red lights flickered across the device. He had no idea if it would work, no idea if it would do anything except make an expensive explosion. "Firing in 30 seconds, he said into the comm system. "Make it count," came's reply. The two fleets entered weapons range. Space lit up with weapons fire. The battle for Nu had begun. And somewhere in the darkness between stars, other species watched and wondered if humanity would be the 8th species to be erased, or if something different was about to happen. The first Confederation salvo destroyed 17 human ships in 3 seconds. They simply vanished, turned into expanding clouds of debris and vapor. The weapons were so powerful that the ships didn't explode. They just stopped existing. On the bridge of the Perseverance, watched his tactical display fill with red marks as human ships died. His hands gripped the command chair so hard his knuckles turned white. "Evasive pattern Delta," he ordered. "All weapons target the nearest Confederation cruiser." The Perseverance's small weapons fired. The shots bounced off the Confederation ship's shields like rain hitting a window. The enemy cruiser didn't even bother to return fire. It was swatting at other, more threatening targets. Flew his patrol craft through the chaos, his squadron of 12 ships trying to attack a Confederation destroyer. He watched 11 of his squadron mates die in the first minute. Plasma bolts turned their ships into burning metal. He was alone, one tiny ship against giants. But notice something. The Confederation ships moved slowly, predictably. They weren't dodging. They weren't worried about return fire. They were arrogant. "Command, this is Patrol 7, called over the comm. The enemy isn't evading. They think we can't hurt them. If we get close enough, we can." A plasma bolt passed within meters of his ship. Dove, spinning his craft through a gap between two Confederation battleships. His heart pounded, but he was still alive, still fighting. Admiral saw the same thing saw. The Confederation fleet was powerful, but they fought like they were swatting insects. No respect for the enemy, no caution. All ships broadcast. New tactic, wolf pack formation. Fast strike teams hit from multiple angles, target their engines and weapons, make them work for this. The human fleet scattered. Instead of fighting in formation like a proper military, they became pirates, guerrilla fighters. 5 human ships would swarm one Confederation vessel, hitting it from all sides before running. Another group would ambush a different target. It was chaos. It wasn't pretty, but it worked better than standing in formation and getting destroyed. On New Surface, Sora helped evacuate civilians into underground shelters. The orbital bombardment had started. Plasma bolts rained from the sky, turning forests into fire and buildings into craters. The sky was red and orange, filled with burning debris from the space battle above. A mother with 2 children ran toward the shelter entrance. Sora grabbed them and pulled them inside just as a plasma bolt hit 50 meters away. The ground shook. Dirt and rocks fell from the ceiling. "How long can we survive down here?" the mother asked, her children crying. "As long as we need to," Sora said, though she had no idea if that was true. The shelters were built to withstand normal bombardment, not the kind of weapons the Confederation was using. But what else could she say? In space, the human fleet was dying. They took Confederation ships with them, but the math was cruel. For every Confederation ship destroyed, 3 or 4 human ships died. The humans fought with missiles, with kinetic weapons, with suicide runs carrying nuclear warheads. They fought with everything they had. Perseverance lost shields, then weapons, then half the crew. But still the ship flew. Still it fought. He found himself laughing, a wild, desperate sound. 15 years of playing diplomat, being polite, being patient. And now he was finally free to fight back. "Captain," his tactical officer shouted, "Confederation flagship is charging a planet-killer weapon. They're going to destroy New." Looked at his screen. Grand Executor's massive flagship, the pride of the Confederation, was charging a weapon designed to crack planets in half. One shot would kill every human on New, all 1.8 million people who had chosen to stay and fight. On the research vessel Horizon activated the quantum disruptor. The device hummed, vibrating with contained energy. Every wire was hot, every circuit was screaming. The calculations said this would work, but calculations were just numbers. "Firing now," said. The quantum disruptor released its pulse. For 3 seconds, nothing happened. 3 seconds of hope and terror and waiting. Then, across the battlefield, 47 Confederation ships suffered catastrophic failures simultaneously. Their FTL drives exploded from within, tearing the ships apart. The quantum pulse had worked, cascading through the Confederation's network like a virus, overloading drives that were all connected to the same system. 47 ships, gone in an instant. The Confederation fleet panicked. They had never seen anything like this. Ships started breaking formation, trying to create distance from each other, afraid that whatever killed those ships might spread. But it wasn't enough. Humanity was still losing. The math was still cruel, and its flagship was still charging its planet-killer weapon. Admiral watched his tactical display. The human fleet was almost gone, maybe 30 ships left. The Confederation still had 400, and that flagship was about to kill everyone on New. He opened a channel to all remaining human ships. "This is Admiral. It's been an honor serving with you. Tell our families we fought well." On the Perseverance looked at his destroyed bridge. Half his crew was dead. Systems were failing. The ship was dying. He thought about 15 years of patience. 15 years of watching the Confederation abuse humans because they could. 15 years of being told that humans existed only because the Confederation allowed it. He made a decision. He said to his cultural, who was manning a weapon station because everyone else was dead, "Get to an escape pod." "What are you doing?" asked. 15 years, said quietly. 15 years they treated us like nothing. Let this be their education. Understood. Her face went pale. "Captain, no." "That's an order. Go." Locked her out of the bridge controls. He heard her running toward the escape pods, heard her crying. Opened a channel to every frequency he could find. Every human ship, every Confederation ship, every species within communication range. He wanted everyone to hear this. "For 15 years we tried to be civilized. We followed your rules. We begged for fairness. You mistook our patience for weakness." His voice was calm now, peaceful even. "Let this be your education." He aimed the Perseverance directly at its flagship. He diverted all remaining power to the engines. The ship accelerated. Faster, faster, 0.6% the speed of light. Saw the human ship coming. He laughed at first. One small diplomatic vessel against his mighty flagship. Ridiculous. His shields could stop that easily. But wasn't firing weapons. He was turning the entire ship into a weapon. At 0.6% light speed, the Perseverance carried more kinetic energy than a nuclear weapon. Mass times velocity. Basic physics that the Confederation had forgotten about because they relied on fancy shields and energy weapons. The Perseverance hit the pride of the Confederation like a bullet hitting paper. The shields held for a microsecond. Then they collapsed. The diplomatic ship buried itself in the flagship's core. The explosion was visible from 12 star systems. Its flagship simply ceased to exist, taking its planet-killer weapon and 3 nearby Confederation ships with it. The Confederation fleet stopped. Their commander was dead. Their formation was broken. 47 ships had been destroyed by some impossible human weapon. Now their flagship was gone. For the first time in 4,000 years, the Confederation's military didn't know what to do. "Fall back," someone in the Confederation chain of command ordered. "Regroup at jump point 7. The Confederation fleet. They jumped away, leaving the battlefield littered with debris from both sides. They left New burning but alive. On the Aurora, Admiral watched them go. His hands were shaking. Around him the bridge crew was silent. They had survived. Somehow, impossibly, they had survived. But the cost was brutal. Of 200 human ships, only 12 remained. Casualty reports came in slowly. 400,000 humans dead. Military personnel, civilian volunteers, everyone who had chosen to fight. On New, Sora climbed out of the shelter. The sky was still burning. Fires covered half the planet, but the bombardment had stopped. They were alive. A young girl tugged on Sora's sleeve. "Did we win?" Sora looked at the burning sky. She thought about how many people had died. She thought about Captain, who she'd never met but whose final words were already spreading across human space. She thought about the Confederation fleet that had run away. "We're still here," Sora said. "That's something." In the debris field where the Perseverance had been, rescue crews found 17 escape pods. Was in one of them. She was pulled from the pod crying, clutching a data storage device that contained 15 years of documentation. 15 years of evidence that Captain had sacrificed himself rather than letting them destroy. The battle was over. New had survived. But as the human survivors looked at their shattered fleet and their burning planet, they knew this was just the beginning. The Confederation would come back, with more ships, with more weapons, with everything they had. Humanity had won the battle, but the war was about to begin. The Confederation's revenge came 3 days later, and it was absolute. They didn't send ships. They didn't waste time with fleets or diplomacy. Instead, they activated the Anchorage Network, a system of ancient weapons satellites hidden throughout the galaxy. Satellites that had been placed thousands of years ago, waiting in the dark for moments exactly like this. 3 human colonies died in a single afternoon. New Beijing, Port Terra, Haven's Gate, 4 billion humans. The satellites fired beams of pure energy that turned atmospheres into fire. Within minutes, the colonies were burning. Within an hour, they were dead worlds, nothing left but radioactive ash. On Earth, Admiral watched the reports come in. His face showed nothing, but inside something broke. He had ordered humanity to fight, and now 4 billion people were dead because of that choice. "We can't fight this," his second-in-command said quietly. "How do you fight satellites we didn't even know existed?" Stared at the tactical display. 9 human colonies remained, 9 out of 12, and the Confederation could activate more satellites whenever they wanted. They could kill every human in the galaxy without ever sending another ship. "We don't fight them head-on," said finally. "We make them bleed in other ways." But across human space, people were terrified. 4 billion dead in an afternoon. Entire worlds turned to ash. The Confederation's message was clear: defy us, and we will erase you from existence. Yet something unexpected started happening in other parts of the galaxy. Species that the Confederation had conquered centuries ago, species who had lived under their rule for generations, started watching humanity's fight. And some of them started remembering their own history. On the industrial world of factory workers who belonged to a species called the started slowing down production. Nothing obvious, just small delays, equipment that took an extra hour to repair, shipments that got lost in paperwork. The Confederation's factories produced 15% less than normal, and nobody could figure out why. On the agricultural world of, farmers began reporting crop failures, except the crops weren't failing. They were being hidden, stored in secret locations. Food that should have gone to feed Confederation military forces went elsewhere instead. These acts of quiet rebellion spread through a dozen worlds. The Confederation tried to crack down, but you can't execute entire planets, and the workers learned their tactics from somewhere. Human guerrilla strategies, transmitted before the communications blackout, had spread like wildfire through the galaxy's oppressed populations. Saw this happening. She had escaped Earth before the Anchorage Network activated, traveling to neutral worlds on a desperate diplomatic mission. She carried data storage devices filled with human history, every revolution, every rebellion, every time an oppressed people had said, "Enough." On the neutral station Crossroads, she met with representatives from 6 species who had suffered under Confederation rule. They met in secret, in a storage bay, surrounded by cargo containers. "Why should we help you?" asked a representative. "Helping you means the Confederation will turn those satellites on us." "They'll do it anyway," replied. "That's what you're learning. That's what we learned. The Confederation doesn't care about obedience or peace. They care about control. And when a species gets too successful, too numerous, too anything, the Confederation finds a reason to call them back." She activated the holographic display showing the records had found. 7 species before humanity, all erased, all following the same pattern. "You're not helping us," said. "You're helping yourselves because we're just the current target. But they've got satellites hidden around your worlds too. One day they'll decide you're the problem, and then you'll face what we're facing now." The representatives looked at each other. They knew she was right. They had always known, deep down, that their obedience was temporary safety, that eventually the Confederation would see them as a threat too. "What do you want from us?" they asked. "Keep doing what you're doing, slow them down, make them look inward, and when the moment comes, be ready to stand up." Meanwhile, in the asteroid belt beyond Nu, worked on something impossible. Admiral had moved the remaining human fleet into hiding, scattered across 100 different asteroids. They couldn't win a military battle, but they could build something that would make the Confederation think twice about using those satellites again. And 500 engineers were constructing ships with no crews, AI-driven vessels, packed with weapons, with nuclear materials, with anything explosive they could find. Each ship had one purpose: mutual assured destruction. "If they kill our worlds, these ships automatically jump to Confederation space and start destroying theirs," explained to 50 ships, enough to kill 50 Confederation worlds, all automated, all impossible to stop once activated. "That's genocide," said quietly. "Yes," replied, "but it's insurance. They can kill us, but only if they're willing to die too." Approved the project. He hated it. It made him sick. But 4 billion humans were already dead, and he would not let the rest die without taking the Confederation with them. On Crossroads Station, worked on something different. She had taken all the documentation she had spent 15 years collecting, everything about Confederation crimes, and she was broadcasting it to every corner of the galaxy. The story of 7 erased species, the proof that the Confederation's peace was built on quiet genocide. She couldn't broadcast directly from human space because the Confederation was jamming all signals, but from neutral stations her messages spread. Other species received them. Some ignored them. Some deleted them, but some read them and started questioning. 6 months passed. The Confederation sent probes to find the human fleet, but the asteroids hid them well. Both sides waited. The Confederation wouldn't risk their worlds by using the Anchorage network again now that humanity had their doomsday fleet ready, and humanity couldn't attack because they were too weak. It was a Cold War, a standoff. Millions of humans lived in crowded shelters on the remaining 9 colonies, waiting for death that might come at any moment. Then discovered something in the Confederation's network architecture. She had been studying their systems for months, looking for weaknesses, and she found one that made her heart stop. "Admiral," she called on the secure channel, "I found it, their weakness." "What weakness?" It's the central AI that coordinates everything for the Confederation. FTL travel, communications, logistics, everything. All 10,000 worlds connected to one network. I didn't understand it before, but now I do. The Confederation isn't strong because they're powerful. They're strong because they're connected. Take out the and they fall apart. Where is it? Their home system, Confederation Prime, the heart of their territory, the most heavily defended location in the galaxy. Laughed bitterly. So their weakness is in the one place we can't reach. "We have 50 AI-driven ships ready to jump," said quietly. "Ships programmed to get to their targets no matter what. Ships we built for mutual destruction. What if we them for one target instead?" Understood what she was suggesting. Send all 50 ships to Confederation Prime, not to destroy worlds but to destroy cut the head off the Confederation. "It would leave us defenseless," said. "If they survive, if even half our ships fail, we'll have nothing left to threaten them with. They'll use the satellites and kill us all." "We're dead anyway," replied. "This way, at least we die trying to break their control over the galaxy." Thought about 4 billion dead humans. He thought about 9 colonies living in fear. He thought about Captain's final words: "Let this be your education." How long to reprogram the ships? 2 weeks. Do it. Across human space, the word spread quietly. Humanity was preparing one final operation, not for survival, not for victory, but to shatter the Confederation even if it meant humanity died in the process. On New, Sora taught classes in an underground shelter. Her students were children who had grown up during war, who had watched worlds burn, who had lost family members. She taught them mathematics, history, literature. She taught them that even in the dark, humans create light. "Teacher," a young boy asked, "will we win?" Sora thought about the 50 ships being prepared. She thought about what victory even meant anymore. "I don't know if we'll win," Sora said honestly, "but I know we'll fight, and sometimes that's all you can do." 2 weeks later, the ships were ready. 50 AI-driven vessels, each packed with quantum disruptors, nuclear weapons, and a crew of 0. Ships designed by humans who had nothing left to lose. Ships programmed with one mission: reach Confederation Prime and destroy no matter the cost. Admiral gave the order. The 50 ships jumped simultaneously, vanishing into faster-than-light space, heading toward the heart of the Confederation's power. And humanity waited to see if their desperation would be enough to break an empire that had ruled the galaxy for 4,000 years. The 50 ships arrived at Confederation Prime in waves. The Confederation's defense fleet tried to stop them, but these weren't normal ships. They were AI-driven, making decisions faster than any living pilot could think. They dodged, weaved, sacrificed themselves to let others through. Was the name humans had given to the primary AI controlling the lead ship. Not because the ship needed a name, but because humans needed to feel like someone was leading this desperate mission. Made 10,000 calculations per second, adjusting course, coordinating with the other ships, finding paths through the defense network that shouldn't exist. 20 ships died in the first minute. Confederation weapons fire was overwhelming, but 30 ships kept going, kept pushing deeper into Confederation Prime's orbital space. The Confederation had never faced an attack on their home system. For 4,000 years, this place had been untouchable, safe, sacred. Now human ships were burning through their defenses like wasps attacking a bear. 15 more ships died, but 15 reached the facility, a massive structure orbiting Confederation Prime like a second moon. The facility was protected by shields that could withstand fleet bombardment. The ships didn't try to break the shields. Instead, they did what it designed them to do. They activated quantum disruptors at point-blank range, sending pulses of energy directly into the quantum network that connected to the entire Confederation. They began to fracture. It wasn't immediate. The AI tried to defend itself, rerouting connections, isolating damaged sectors. But the disruptors kept firing, kept pushing, kept breaking connections, and it was never designed to be attacked from within its own network. Across the galaxy, Confederation systems started failing. FTL drives stopped working. Communication networks went dark. Supply chains, carefully coordinated for thousands of years, collapsed. Ships found themselves stranded between stars, unable to calculate safe jump routes. Worlds that depended on imported food suddenly couldn't receive shipments. The Confederation's mighty empire, built on perfect coordination and central control, began tearing itself apart. On Earth, Admiral watched reports come in. The quantum disruptors had worked better than anyone hoped. The wasn't just damaged, it was shattering, fragments of its intelligence spinning off into isolated subsystems, each one fighting for control. "Did we win?" his second-in-command asked. Looked at the reports. Confederation military fleets scattered across the galaxy, unable to coordinate or even talk to each other. But also, civilian worlds going dark, medical supplies not reaching plague-stricken areas, food not reaching hungry populations. "We broke them," said quietly, "but we broke the galaxy too." Rebellions erupted on 60 Confederation worlds. Species that had been oppressed for centuries saw the chaos and rose up. Some fought for independence. Some just wanted revenge. The Confederation's military, scattered and unable to organize, couldn't respond to all of them. On, the workers seized their factories. On, farmers declared independence. 100 similar rebellions bloomed like flowers after rain, small acts of defiance becoming revolutions. But the chaos hurt everyone. Without the coordinating trade, economies crashed. Worlds that had specialized in one resource found themselves unable to trade for what they needed. Starvation became a real threat for billions of people, human and alien alike. The Confederation's ruling council, desperate and humbled, sent a message to Earth. It was Ambassador Hal who delivered it, the same alien who had threatened humanity so casually 8 months ago. But now his voice was different, quieter, desperate. "We request negotiations, please." Admiral met the Confederation delegation on neutral ground at Crossroads Station. 12 human representatives faced 20 Confederation officials. The room was tense, filled with the ghosts of billions dead. Hal spoke first. "You've destroyed us. The Confederation is collapsing, rebellions everywhere. Our fleet is scattered. Our economy is in ruins. You've won." "Have we?" replied. "I see reports of famine on 40 worlds, plague spreading because medical supplies can't reach where they're needed. Your economy is crashing, yes, but you're taking innocent civilians with you." "Then what do you want?" Hal asked. "You have the power to destroy us completely. Why negotiate?" Looked at the alien who had once told him that humanity existed only because the Confederation allowed it. He thought about responding with anger, with vengeance, with all the pain humanity had suffered. Instead, he said something else. "We want you to understand something. We didn't want this war. We wanted to live in peace. You forced this on us. You mistook our patience for weakness, our desire for peace for cowardice." Leaned forward. "We're not you. We don't need to grind other species under our boot to feel strong, but never ever mistake our mercy for weakness again." The negotiations took 2 weeks. Humanity's terms were harsh but not genocidal. Complete independence for all probationary species. Dismantlement of the Anchorage network. Reparations for the destroyed colonies. And most importantly, restructuring of galactic governance so no single coalition could hold absolute power. The Confederation agreed to everything. They had no choice. Their empire was falling apart, and only human engineers understood quantum networks well enough to help rebuild them in a limited, distributed form that couldn't be used as a weapon of control. But added one more condition, one that surprised even his own council. "We'll help you rebuild, not because we forgive you, but because billions of innocent people across the galaxy are suffering because your empire collapsed. We'll share our engineering knowledge. We'll help restart trade networks. We'll help you transition to a galaxy where cooperation replaces domination." Hal stared at him. "Why? We tried to exterminate you." "Because we're human," replied. "And humans are very good at surviving, but we're also very good at building. We'd rather build than destroy, but we needed you to understand that we can do both." The Treaty of Ember was signed 3 weeks later. The Confederation officially fragmented into smaller, independent alliances. The Anchorage network was dismantled, each satellite destroyed under human supervision. And humanity, despite having lost 4 billion people, became the unexpected bridge between a galaxy tearing itself apart. Not through conquest, not through domination, but through being the only faction that seemed to understand how to rebuild after chaos. Traveled to former Confederation worlds, helping coordinate humanitarian aid, food shipments to starving planets, medical supplies to plague zones. She worked 18-hour days and slept in cargo bays, helping the same species that had wanted humanity dead 6 months ago. "Why are you helping us?" a mother asked as help distribute food on. "Because you're hungry," replied simply. "And we remember what it's like to be powerless. We don't want anyone else to suffer like we did." On New, reconstruction began. The burned forests would take decades to regrow. The shattered cities needed years of rebuilding. But slowly, carefully, humans started building again. Sora returned to teaching, but now her classroom was above ground. She taught students who had lived through war, who had watched worlds burn, who had learned that peace is something you fight to protect. "Teacher," a student asked, "was it worth it, all the people who died?" Sora thought about that question. 4 billion humans dead, trillions of credits in damage, an entire galactic order collapsed. Was it worth it? "I don't know if worth is the right word," Sora said, "but I know that we're free now, and so are 100 other species who were living under the Confederation's boot. We paid a terrible price for that freedom, but the alternative was to live as pets, watching our children and suffer the same abuse forever." She looked at her students. "Freedom isn't free, that's not just a saying. It's a truth written in blood and sacrifice. We're free now, but we have to remember what it cost so we never take it for granted." 20 years passed. The galaxy rebuilt itself into something new. Not the Confederation's empire, but a loose network of independent systems that traded and cooperated because it benefited everyone, not because they were forced to. Humanity's population recovered slowly. The destroyed colonies were settled again. New bloomed, forests regrowing, cities shining. Stood before a memorial on New, a wall carved with 400,000 names, the defenders who died in the first battle. She came here every year on the anniversary. She was old now, gray-haired and tired, but she still came. A young alien stood beside her, a student studying human history. "Was it worth it?" the student asked, the same question humans had been asking for 20 years. Looked at the stars above. Free stars, where ships of 100 species traveled without fear, where young humans and young aliens learned together, where the word Confederation was a history lesson about what happens when power becomes tyranny. She thought about Captain, who turned his ship into a weapon rather than watch New die. About Admiral, who chose to help rebuild rather than seek revenge. About Sora, teaching in shelters while the world burned. About building weapons of last resort because he had no other choice. "Ask your children," said finally. "Ask them if they're glad they grew up free instead of under the Confederation's rule. Ask them if they'd choose safety and chains over freedom and risk." The student thought about this. What would you choose? Touched the memorial wall, feeling the carved names under her fingers. 400,000 humans who chose to fight rather than bow. 4 billion who died because they were caught in the crossfire of powers they never controlled. "We already chose," said. "We chose freedom. We paid for it in blood. And we'd make the same choice again because the alternative isn't living. It's just existing." She walked away from the memorial, leaving the young alien to contemplate the names on the wall. Across the galaxy, in 1,000 different languages, a new saying had emerged. A warning, a reminder, a promise. Never test human patience, because what breaks is never just humanity. It's the chains that tried to bind them. The galaxy remembered, and the galaxy learned. Because patience, when finally broken, doesn't just hurt the ones who held it. It shatters everything that drove them to that breaking point. And humanity, despite everything, despite the loss and the pain and the cost, had chosen to build something better on the ashes. Not an empire, not domination, but a future where species cooperated as equals. Where patience wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, and breaking it was a lesson the galaxy would never forget.